What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be reviewing every single pick of a 7-round mock draft just dropped by my buddy Ian Cummings over here on PFN. So if you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe to that fun YouTube jazz. Below my face is my board. Below that are all the ways to get more connected with the community as well as take advantage of the sponsors of the show. Let's jump right into this. Starting out with the #1 overall selection. This is going to be a long-ass video. I am slightly hungover, so this is going to be great. It is a live reaction because I would be absolutely insane to read this entire thing and then also be able to reread the entire thing. Also, it makes it a little bit more fun to question what the hell is going to happen, just like the Bears going at #1 with Drake May out of North Carolina. There's a lot of debates whether Drake May should be the first quarterback taken. I still believe pretty heavily that Caleb Williams has more upside than Drake May. I think he's dealt with probably a little bit more adversity than Drake May, but more importantly, my only issue with Drake May, my real only issue is the fact that Drake May takes a lot of contact, and he does not look like Anthony Richardson. Let's put it that way. And even Anthony Richardson is out for the year because of being hit. So I'm not a huge fan of the durability overall with Drake May, but he has so far been relatively healthy in college. I just would be concerned about it in the NFL. He can make all the high-level throws. He is a beast. I would prefer to go Marvin Harrison Jr. and roll the dice on whether I get Drake May or Caleb Williams at #4. But the Jets move up. Ooh, this is intriguing. The Jets move up here to select Caleb Williams. So they end up oh, that's intriguing. What in the hell? So the Cardinals trade their pick right here as well as their early third, and instead they get a solid amount of draft capital. I don't know if this to me would be requisite, but you do get a top tier defensive back, a really solid running back. But in this class, I know that I would be able to snipe a really solid corner. I don't think I would prefer to take this draft capital compensation. But again, I'm not a guru in terms of trade value, so I will say that when I do look at this, I feel like my trades are a little bit more balanced than this, and I feel like I get criticized quite a bit for being a little bit light on the trade compensation. A 2025 1 and 2, and then just a 1 this year, and then a 2 in 2026. And you get a couple good players, but I don't know. It feels a little bit rich, especially since you're giving up that number 66 pick. Anyways, we'll be able to at least see that the Jets have another pick in this mock draft. They select Caleb Williams. That is going to be the future. I think that going offensive tackle would have been the right move for the Jets. Just stay in place. But if they end up saying, hey, Aaron Rodgers, we're done with you, buddy. We need a future, I can't fully blame them. So next we have the New England Patriots at #3 going Marvin Harrison Jr. Can't complain about that one. Obviously, just a pure X build. One of the most fluid wide receivers you'll see. Just one of those guys where I think prospect fatigue has lowered our enamorization of Mr. Harrison, but don't let the fatigue fool you. He is one of the best out there. Arizona Cardinals now moved back up. Okay. Arizona's trading a lot of their picks. I already know my Cardinals fans are going to lose their shit to go Joe Alt. I love Ian. Again, I'm just Ian and I, we have a good relationship. It's going to be completely not personal. It's going to be completely professional. I don't see any logic with this. If you want to go after an offensive tackle as the Cardinals, I would not give up this much compensation in order to make that happen. But also, I would prefer to move Paris Johnson back to left tackle, stay at pick #8, and select a right tackle for the future. We have a lot of really good ones in this class. I do feel like this is a little bit of a poor move for Arizona. For a team that has a lot of holes, I don't think offensive tackle is the biggest one. And if you really do want to get a tackle of the future, get the right tackle at pick 8. There's no reason to lose more draft capital when you just gained it. It doesn't feel like it is the right move for the Cardinals to go back-to-back left tackles in the top 6 back-to-back years. Then we got the Washington Commanders to go Brock Bowers with Olu Fashanu still on the board. I highly suggest going after an elite tackle like that can develop behind Cornelius Lucas, behind Charles Leno. Like, that's the type of guy who I would want over Brock Bowers. And I have Brock Bowers higher. But the simple fact is Sam Howell makes a lot of mistakes when under pressure. Or, just naturally, I would want him to be more protected, especially since he's a smaller stature quarterback. I would definitely opt to go away from the weapons route because they have so many weapons as it is, and just develop that O-line. And again, this is someone who has taken Brock Bowers to the Commanders. I would give this still a B, but it really depends on what we're going to do with the rest of the draft. Again, this is a live reaction, so we'll see. Maybe there's a good tackle there in round number 2. Then we got the Giants going Rome Odunze. I just don't really think Rome Odunze is worth a top 10 selection. I'm still waiting on more all-22. I don't know why. Like, for some reason, Washington tape is very, very scarce this year for all-22. But, similar to a couple other players who I end up falling in love with later, I feel like Rome Odunze might be one of those players when the tape starts really rolling out. Buccaneers going Malik Neighbors. I don't see this as a wise move for the Buccaneers. I get that, you have some expiring contracts coming up. Malik Neighbors is a very good wide receiver. The Buccaneers, the way you're going to win is getting a quarterback. So for me, I do believe that would be the best possible move. Malik Neighbors is a fun wide receiver. He's a very good wide receiver. I just don't think that the value matches up for the specific team. Then we got the Bears going Keon Coleman. So I think that's perfectly fine. That if you're able to pull this off, that's fine. You're essentially getting the worst version of Marvin Harrison. Not as good of a release package, not as good of a route runner, similar after the catch, pretty damn similar hands as well. You're getting pretty much your cheap version of Marvin Harrison Jr., and you get a solid amount of draft capital for that. So, take it as you will. I feel like this wouldn't be an awful consolation prize if the Bears move out of pick number 1 and end up missing out on Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll see what happens there. But then we got the Chargers going Terrion Arnold. I am a huge fan of this. He is my number 1 corner in the draft, and graded wise, it's not really close. He is one of the smartest corners I've ever seen. He's graded almost as high as JPJ, Joey Porter Jr., my number 2 player in the draft last year. I didn't see the learning on the field as quickly as JPJ did, and that's why JPJ was so high, is because I saw him, even when he failed, end up bouncing back. But he has very, very similar mistakes. It's these fast 45-degree cuts that are really Terrion Arnold's biggest weakness. And in a press zone coverage system, especially if you shade him inside, I don't think this guy is going to be beaten by many, if any, routes. Genuinely one of the best corners that I have studied. He's up there. He's probably the 3rd best corner that I have studied behind JPJ and Sauce Gardner. Then we got the Tennessee Titans going Olu Fashanu. This is a dream pick for the Titans. I am in full support. We have the Las Vegas Raiders going Nate Wiggins, another cornerback out of Clemson. I do think a corner is a position I would target for the Raiders, but not here when quarterbacks are on the board. It's going to be the biggest way to, again, move the needle, so to speak, in terms of being able to make some wins. It's not going to be a corner. It's going to be probably going to be a quarterback. So at pick number 12, we got the New Orleans Saints going Johnny Newton. I do know that this team, the Saints, need defensive interior. They do. Looking at their contracts, like, what you really do need is to get some bolstering on the interior of the defense. And because Breezy is really your only hope for the future in that regard. The edge rushing room's relatively solid. I only take edge rushers because the value is too damn good. But when you look at the Saints at pick number 12, the way you really move the needle, again, is not going to be through Johnny Newton. I don't feel like this would be a bad selection. I believe that quarterback is just the far superior selection. Green Bay Packers going Amarius Mims here, full support. I do have other tackles that are above him. J.C. Latham will be moving up as well. I don't think Amarius Mims will come out in this draft. I think he should be a top 3 selection in 2025. But we will see what happens. He's going to be an absolute freak show. I just personally don't think he's going to come out, but he very well could. The Rams in going Dallas Turner. I've made this pick myself plenty of times. I'm in full support of this one. Dallas Turner is an absolute beast, and his size is the only concern, but he still plays at a much larger size than he is, and that's a massive plus because a lot of players play at their size, and for the larger players that's okay, but sometimes these smaller edge rushers really do get moved around like smaller edge rushers. Dallas Turner is not one of those. Bengals going on offensive tackle, and J.C. Latham in round number 1 is as good of a pick as you can imagine. It's him and Kia, like JC Latham and Keon Coleman are probably the two guys I would want the most out of almost everybody on the board. That is not the left tackles. Within reason, JC Latham and Keon Coleman are the two dream picks for the Bengals, and they get one here in JC Latham, so good for them. Buffalo Bills go Kool-Aid McKinstry. I am perfectly fine with this as well. Kool-Aid is somebody I'm actually watching his all-22 back right now. I do love Kool-Aid. I have a very high bar for him to pass because of how highly I think of him. And there's some reps in there I don't really love, but he is overall a very talented corner, one of the best. Again, he's probably top 10 in all corners that I've studied. I've been only studying since the 2020 draft, to be fair. So you take that as you will, but he is a very talented corner. He is only a couple spots behind Terry and Arnold, and he does play the number one receiver the majority of the time. So got to give credit where credit's due. He's a very high-level player. The Bills could always use some extra DB help. Corner, I'm not fully down with, but when you get the value of Kool-Aid McKinstry, you can't pass that up. Then we got the Cardinals going Brian Thomas Jr. here. I don't see this remotely being worth it at all. Like, we've essentially, I would be very mad as a Cardinals fan. On a day one grade, if you walked out with Brian Thomas and Joe Alt and a couple, compensatory essentially selections for getting the hell out of pick number 2, I would genuinely be disappointed. I'd probably give this a D grade for Arizona at best, maybe an F. Joe Alt's a really good player. That's the only reason why I would consider it. And you do get some extra picks out of there. I think this Brian Thomas pick would be an F for me. He needs more time to develop. He's not proven to be a number one wide receiver at the NFL level just yet. But there's a lot he can do. I think if this was a second round selection, I'd be much more open to it. But the fact that it's here at pick 17 kind of rubs me the wrong way. So continuing on, the Broncos going Laiatu Latu. I'm fully fine with this one. He's a really talented edge rusher, great length, great production. And the Broncos, again, after pretty much releasing the majority of their edge room, could always use somebody with this level of talent. Then we got the Falcons going Troy Franklin. I'd be intrigued to see this. With the quarterbacks on the board, I see, again, that being the biggest needle mover. And I do believe that Ian is not a huge fan of the quarterback class overall. So it is understanding as to why maybe he would lean away from it. But with the Falcons, a wide receiver is not going to change anything. It's not. The quarterback is what's going to actually change the fate of this team. But I do love Troy Franklin. Vikings going J.J. McCarthy. I have multiple quarterbacks over him, but he is a very solid quarterback. He has the it factor to him. We'll see what happens as he faces Nick Saban. And I'm very intrigued because that could drop J.J. McCarthy down to a third-round pick, or it could boost him up to being a top 20 pick like this being actually worth it. So, we'll see in about a month's time as to whether this is actually going to be worth it. You had the Colts going Cooper DeJean. Made this pick myself. Don't think he's just a boundary corner. I think he could be pretty much everywhere. So, I'm extremely intrigued what the Colts could do with him because apparently, I thought I was a psychopath for having Jalen Jones. Well, he was my number 2 corner for a while. I think he ended up being like my number 3 or 4. And he went in the 7th round of the Colts. I started thinking like, damn, what the hell am I going to do? My brother is doing a good job there. So very excited because I'm starting to have a lot more faith in my quarterback analysis overall, or cornerback analytics overall. So very excited about that. And that's why I feel a little bit more conviction when I start talking about these corners and being able to take some swings like Terry and Arnold, corner 1, etc. like that. There's some guys in here that are well deserving of it. New England Patriots and going Jaden Daniels out of LSU. They trade up with the Seahawks. I don't know why the Seahawks wouldn't take Jaden Daniels themselves because I do think that's a great system fit for Jaden. And, New England Patriots get to succeed here. They get Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jaden Daniels. I'm not against it. But for the Seahawks, I'm against it. So, again, you get pretty much solid draft capital in return for Seattle, but I don't think the Seahawks that have as many issues. So I would prefer for the Seahawks to almost be willing to give up more draft capital to select their quarterback, even though they've already given up quite a bit to get Leonard Williams. Next, you got the Steelers going Quinyon Mitchell. I would not be a huge fan of this one. Again, I know that I'm pretty sure Ian's just trying to highlight quite a few really cool players in the first round, etc. But this is a 7-round mock draft. So I'm going to just say Quinyon Mitchell is not a first round talent. He's a very solid corner, great ball skills, solid positioning. I think he would be a very good second round pick. But there's just so many better corners, including, Joey Porter Jr.'s, right hand man and Kalen King. I personally don't believe that this would be the move I'd be very proud of. I think he could end up working out for the Steelers. Again, that's why I'm happy if it's a second round pick. But at pick number 23, especially with someone like Talise Fuaga on the board, I'm just not a fan of it. The Texans then going Talise. I think that corner number 2 could have been actually, like, if you swap these 2 picks, I'd be much more open to it. Because I think they actually complement each other pretty well, like Talise to the Steelers, Quinyon to the Texans. But Talise, essentially, you are going to be investing in the future. He might need a little bit more development, but he's an absolute freak show. It is BPA. I would not blame the Texans for going after him. Dolphins going after Zach Frazier. I did not think that he would be remotely worth a first-round pick. As a center, that's a low-value position. I would prefer to take Zach Frazier in the 3rd round. I would probably give this pick a D, but we'll see what happens at the Senior Bowl. We'll see. You get the Dallas Cowboys and going Princely Umanmielen out of Florida. With Chop Robinson on the board, I would be taking the guy with the highest ceiling, and that's going to be Chop. So I don't think edge is a bad position to go for the future, but at the same time, I do think that there are some more wise suggestions, or wise options at that edge position. Detroit Lions going Jared Verse. Speaking of one that I think is better than Princely Umanmielen, Jared Verse. He's an absolute freak show, and the Lions would be blessed to have him there. You have the Jacksonville Jaguars going Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. I've made this pick myself. I think it's a great move. I actually really like Xavier Legette. I don't think I thought he was 6'3", 227. If I'm going to be honest, if he ends up being 6'1", he does kind of look shorter than 6'3". So I just remember 6'3", 227 was the figure. If he's not actually 6'3", you do have some things to concern about, but Xavier Legette's really, really fun. I don't really know if run after the catch ability, like making guys miss, is what his run after the catch ability is. It's really that speed down the field. He's very similar to a much larger version of Malik Neighbors with a little bit worse missed tackle ability. So I think it'll be a smart move for the Jaguars. The Chiefs then going Chop Robinson. I mean, I wouldn't be against this one because of the fact that I think Chop can actually work well with Felix and George. I would kick George to the inside at that point and, have some really unique pass rushing sets. But, sometimes the value is too good to pass on. I would go after Emeka Ibuka at this point, but Chop Robinson's very, very tough to let fall to a rival. Then we got the Niners going Kingsley Suamatea. That's the best pick realistically for the 49ers to grab because he can play right tackle right away and be a successor there at left. Then you got the Ravens going Troy Fautanu. I think the tackles are really where you need to focus on. Troy Fautanu could potentially play tackle. And, I do actually like the fact that he could instantly play at guard or potentially play at tackle. I think he has the length. He just needs to be a little bit more refined. He had a 5-pressure game this year, and any tackle that has 5 pressures allowed during a game, that to me almost knocks you out of contention to be a tackle. But it's really over 5. If you go over 5, I'm guaranteed never thinking of you as an actual tackle in the NFL. 5 is where I really don't think it. 4 is where I start being like, well, why? And then 3 is like, you had a bad game. So Troy had a 5-pressure game. I think that he probably will end up being an offensive guard, but we'll see what happens there. Philadelphia Eagles going Darius Robinson. I do not like this pick that much. I like Darius Robinson. I'm a Missouri guy. Y'all know this. I pretty much exude Missouri fanship. I am biased. There's no way Darius Robinson deserves to be featured at the top of this draft. I mean, there's Braylon Trice on the board who's 10 times the guy at 16 pounds less. I don't understand this. And Ian, obviously, I know that I'll talk to you about this after. There's some picks in here. I know you're probably just trying to feature some cool guys here, and hey, I respect it. Unlike these CBS mock drafts that are just rinse, wash, repeat. I do appreciate being able to talk about some new players here and there. Of course, it's 7 rounds, so we have a lot more to cover. But Darius Robinson being a first-round pick, I mean, he's worse than Isaiah McGuire, who was a 4th. And y'all know how much I loved Isaiah McGuire. And I do like Darius Robinson. But pick 32, I'll be very mad. Panthers getting Emeka Buka is great value. I'm in full support of that. Same thing with the Cardinals getting Tavondre Sweat at 34. He's exactly what they should be looking for. I wouldn't be mad. Honestly, if you swap this pick with the Brian Thomas pick, I would be like, okay, both are a little bit high, but I understand the idea of both. I know Jeremiah Trotter is Ian's number one linebacker. There it is. Didn't even look at that. But, he is not really, to me, I don't fully believe in him. He's still short, light, and kind of slow. He's smart, and, that does lean to be a pretty positive trade. But for me, I don't really trust the actual, I'm one to not really care too much about measurables. The measurables scare the shit out of me in this one. So this is going to be heavily combine dependent for me to see how Jeremiah Trotter becomes as an athlete over the offseason. So far, I'm not impressed. The Commanders going after another defensive back at this point. I'm watching the Dolphins absolutely eviscerate their secondary. Denzel Burke, y'all know how much I love Denzel Burke, but it's a great value player and somebody I think this team does kind of desperately need. He is unbelievable. I started watching him in class. Don't tell my professor, but I was actually watching some all 22 of him, and it's like, wow, him versus Michigan was spectacular. There were some double moves where he was targeted, and he was reading that like a book. Big fan. Giants going Carson Beck. I would kind of lose my mind if I ended up passing out on Jaden Daniels and ending up with Carson Beck. It's just not my thing. It's not. So we'll leave it there. Washington Commanders going Chris Braswell. I don't know what's up with the Braylon Trice hate right now, but that's okay. We all have our own opinions, and Chris Braswell is worth this selection. He's a very solid edge rusher, and this team does need to go for one. I'm still waiting to see what tackle the Commanders are going to get. Newman for the Packers is an excellent move. Yeah, I know they have some young safeties who are playing well, but at the end of the day, you can always get better and better and better. Secondary players get hurt all the damn time, and Tyler Newman is an upgrade over what you have. Chargers going Tyler Guyton. I love the idea of getting a developmental right tackle here. I do fully support this pick. We got Ladd McConkey here for the Tennessee Titans, wide receiver out of Georgia. I feel like he's too much of a slot guy, and I actually like Kyle Phillips quite a bit. I'd prefer to get someone who could be a true boundary receiver like A.D. Mitchell at this point. We got Tampa Bay Buccaneers going Edgerrin Cooper. I made this pick myself. They have a lot of aging veterans continuing to get the younger, more athletic dudes to develop for a year under them would be a very wise move. Still think quarterback should have been the move, but Bo Nix ends up being a quarterback for the Raiders. I highly doubt that he ends up falling this far. He makes some poor mistakes here and there, but at the end of the day, I think he's like 5 points away or 6 points away, maybe 7, away from being undefeated and beating Washington twice. At the end of the day, Bo Nix is actually a quarterback who can compete with the best, and the Raiders would be blessed to have him, but I highly doubt that he will be here. So, Packers going Trey Henderson. I don't think he's reliable enough. He's a solid running back. I got to study him more before I make an official opinion, but the more I watched him, the less wowed I was by him. I feel like he's a solid RB4 in the NFL, and that sounds extremely rude, but the fact is I do believe he is an RB worth being on a roster in the NFL, which is kind of hard nowadays with the amount of talented dudes who are out there. Rams going Jordan Morgan. This is proper value for Jordan Morgan. I do support this 100%. Rams could always get a boost on the O-line. Bengals going Byron Murphy the second. I love seeing Byron Murphy go up this high. He's a very talented interior defensive lineman. He complements Tavondre Sweat super well. And, the Bengals could use that pass rushing presence from the inside. Eagles going after another Georgia corner. Makes sense. But, he has unbelievable potential. He needs a couple years to develop, which will be great. You have 7 quarterbacks that will be on roster not named Kamari Lassiter. If you do take this, so it'll be 8 as of next year. That's where I start getting a little bit concerned. But still, the value was right. I think it's a good move. Houston Texans getting Kalen King. You already know I just talked about going after a corner in the first round, so I'm in full support of this one. Kalen King is one of my blue chip players of the class. We got New Orleans Saints going Jalen Polk. I think this is a good one as well. Defensive interior and wide receiver are 2 positions I would go after for the Saints. Although Jalen Polk was held to 0 yards in 2 back-to-back games. I forgot to see what he did this past game. He probably went off, but ultimately, I'm not a huge fan of seeing receivers go a couple weeks, like almost 3 weeks of time without getting a single reception or a single yard. But regardless, the Saints should be in the mood for a quarterback still. And I think that's the position I would take above all. You got the Buffalo Bills going Patrick Paul here. I don't think it's a bad idea to develop an offensive tackle, but I would prefer to. I don't think he's that good, just to be blunt. I think that you need to look at a right tackle for the future, and I don't know if he is going to be athletic enough to play the NFL, especially if you're transitioning to a different side of the ball. I don't know. Then we got the Atlanta Falcons here at 51 going TJ Tampa. A second corner is not a bad idea. Jeff Okudah definitely should be, brought on and continue to develop. Who cares if he ends up being the corner 2 and TJ ends up being the corner 3? I think that's a best case scenario, but TJ Tampa has an extremely high floor. I think it's perfectly fine. JT Tuimoloau to the Vikings is proper value. They need to go after an edge rusher here as well. So I totally believe this is a great pick. The Vikings are doing a very solid job in this draft when you take the pick value out of it, because JT in the first might make more sense than JJ McCarthy, but I do get it. They need to get edge rusher and quarterback, and that's exactly what they did. Cooper Beebe's a pick I've made for the Giants and continue to boost the offensive line. Never a bad idea. Colts going Bo Braid out of Maryland. He's made some big plays in there. Not going to say it's a bad idea, but when you have Cooper DeJean, you're kind of pigeonholing him into a role that he has to play now, which is ruining the one upside of him, which is, he will find the right position for himself. Yeah, you got the Cleveland Browns going Michael Penix. It's intriguing. I think the value's right, so I'm not going to disagree if he is on the board for the Browns to say, hey, DTR, Michael Penix, two different types of dudes. We'll see which one could be our future. But, this team probably wants to make a Super Bowl push. They'll probably go somewhere else. Graham Barton for the Steelers is a great move. He's going to move to the interior of the offensive line to play center. I think that's a great idea. Karan Amajaje, I love, and he will need to. So this is pretty much everything. If you extend Tyron Smith a year, then this makes total sense. We'll see what happens, but Karan is a very talented offensive tackle, someone I have a lot of respect for. We got the Lions going Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. We already got one edge rusher, so we'd be kicking him to the inside. I don't really fully believe that that's the right move. You have really good corners still on the board, like Dwight McGlothern, that I would be putting in this conversation. I just don't really think that the value is there for Landon Jackson. You can go defensive interior with Leonard Taylor as well. Chris Jenkins from Michigan. There's just better players, in my opinion, to play the same role that Landon Jackson would play. Andrew Makuba for the Jaguars. He's a solid corner in safety hybrid. I don't really know if this would be the best move for the Jags, but, I wouldn't hate it either. Dolphins going Xavier Worthy. He's a solid player. He's a good deep threat. I feel like people will try to say he's going to be the next Tyreek. He's not. He's a very good wide receiver nonetheless. He actually, unfortunately, ended off yesterday on a boot, which really sucks. But, I don't really know if that's going to be that long of a return from injury. We'll see what it is at the combine. Then we have the Niners going Rook Ororo. Big fan of Rook. He is actually a number 32 player on my board. I had prospect fatigue with him. If I'm just going to be completely honest, I'll take it on the chin. I had prospect fatigue and started dropping him down my board for no reason. I rewatched him and I'm like, wow, this guy is good. And he's smart too. I'm a big fan of Rook. Then we got the Chiefs going AD Mitchell. That's an incredible move for the Chiefs. You cannot complain about getting Chop Robinson and AD Mitchell. Both of them should be round one picks, if I'm going to be honest. Malachi Corley for the Ravens. He's kind of Rashee Rice, but worse. So I guess this is the proper range to go after someone like that. I don't really know if Malachi Corley fits the role that I would want for a wide receiver in the Ravens offense. I still want to get someone who has a little bit more height to him rather than after the catch ability, because I would rather have Zay Flowers be the guy who I just get the ball to quickly and then let another larger receiver. I'm slipping like Jermaine Burton. He's not a larger receiver. He's actually relatively the same weight. He's like 6', 200, but he's a better deep threat. He's just a better jump catch player. He's just a better wide receiver than Malachi Corley. Then we got Philadelphia Eagles going Trey Benson. So, if I ended off rounds 1 and 2 with Trey Benson, Kamari Lassiter, and Darius Robinson, I don't feel like we'd be saying that, Howie's cooking. Just, honestly, I don't. but Trey Benson's the best running back in the class, so I don't really think it's a loss either. We got the Carolina Panthers going Kalen Carson. We have another 200 picks to talk about as well, and I'm already, 30 minutes in? We got to speed this up. Going a boundary DB is a solid move for the Panthers because of all the injuries that always happen. Kalen Carson has a lot of upside. I would prefer to go offensive line here, but it is what it is. Jets, because they lost DJ Reed in this, I do think Josh Newton is the proper value, so solid idea. Seahawks going Christian Haynes to play the left guard spot. Perfectly fine with that. Him, Bradford, and Oluwatimi would be a nasty young interior. Then we got the Giants going to Leonard Taylor here. I think without, since you trade away Leonard Williams, Leonard Taylor might come in and actually have a really, really good career. He's just fallen off a little bit. I would not call him lean by any stretch of the imagination because he definitely looks a little bit out of shape there. But the Giants would not be remiss to go after Leonard Taylor at this point. Cam Kitchens to the Bears. At this point, it's BPA. Don't really feel like it's not going to be the right move. It's like the value's there. You might as well take it. Commanders going Barrett Carter. They do need to go after linebacker. I'd prefer to go Junior Colson, who's going to be more of a Mike build, than Barrett Carter, who is also going to be a Will, similar to what they already have. Then we have the Los Angeles Chargers going Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia. I honestly think it's perfectly fine. You also have Jamari Sawyer on your roster, so you can at least, I think they played together for a year. Even if not, you have that Georgia training, that versatility. Cedric Van Pran is well worth it at 71. We had pick 72. We got the Cardinals going Donovan Jackson. I'm, again, really big fan of this. I've done it myself because of the fact that you get to pair him back up with his buddy Paris Johnson. Again, I would hope that, if you stayed at 8, ended up getting J.C. Latham or, Talise Fuaga or Amarius Mims, and then had, Donovan Jackson and Paris Johnson on the left side and kept your picks, that would have been more ideal for me. Buccaneers going Braylon Allen. I don't feel like this is going to solve anything. I just don't. Braylon Allen he's kind of just a poor man's Derrick Henry. And, I just haven't been sold on him because he's someone who will get like 2 yards per carry and then go off another game. Like, I don't like the fact that a running back could be absolutely taken out of a game plan during a game in college because most likely that's exactly what you'll see in the NFL. New York goes Tyleik Williams. They've been looking for defensive interior. He is not 320 pounds. He is listed at 290. So, Ian, between you and me, I thought he was 320 pounds as well. I mean, I've looked at every other source. They have now moved him down to 290, including Ohio State. I thought he was 320 as well, but apparently not. If he's 290, I don't know if Ian would change this idea for the pick. The Raiders going Bucky Irving's a great idea. Don't really see Josh Jacobs going to be coming back. And, you get to pair him back up with Bo Nix. Hallelujah. So, next pick, we got the Los Angeles Rams going Kendall Bowler out of Florida A&M. I'm just going to be completely honest. I have not studied Kendall, but I do think going DB for the Rams, not a bad idea. Tez Walker for the Bengals. I would hope that the Bears would actually have gone after Tez Walker because you pair him up with Drake May. But this team could certainly use more of that big play threat down the field. And I'm a pretty big fan of being able to go and use Devontae Walker as a way to open up more for somebody else. I'm not fully sold on Tez actually being a really good receiver, but we'll see what happens as time goes on. Broncos going Ben Sinnott out of K-State. He's super versatile, and there you go, right there. He's really good after the catch. Somebody who's been consistent. I mean, he's getting 130 yards as a tight end, so big fan of that. Overall, good player. Could see the Broncos really liking that versatility. I'd prefer to go after a wide receiver, but the value is there. Brandon Dorlus for the Green Bay Packers. I actually got some criticism on this, and I appreciate the honest feedback from y'all. I do think the Packers don't really need to go after defensive line because I forgot about how good Carl Brooks was last year. I had Carl Brooks really high on my board. I just think that he had some poor testing, if I'm not mistaken. And so he slipped down the board a little bit, but talent wins above all. And, I just don't really see a role for Brandon Dorlus. I'd prefer to go maybe after a boundary corner, a wide receiver, more offensive line. I just feel like the Packers could get a little bit more value. Even if you get Joe Milton at this point, bring in some QB competition, the value is worth it. Chris Jenkins, especially if you want to get someone who's around 280, 290 pounds, Chris Jenkins is probably going to be your guy. He's 300, but he was naturally down there at 290. Amazing pick for the Seattle Seahawks, especially if they don't bring back Leonard Williams. Rhonda Gadsden is a unique wide receiver. I just said wide receiver, I would go after him for the Packers. But here at 81, I don't think that Gadsden, who's a hybrid tight end, so he's a slot tight end, is going to be the right move. I don't feel like he's that good of a player. He is very smooth as a route runner, but he's not very fast. So I feel like this is a bit of a stretch, but I do like the idea of the Packers potentially going with him on day 3. Jackson Powers-Jones and JPJ to the Bears. Big fan of this one. He should have gone earlier, but it is what it is. Bears get to celebrate. The Bears also select at 83 Adisa Isaac. I do like this one. Oh, this is a trade for Justin Fields. Okay, so here we go. They get 2 third-round picks for Justin Fields. I don't feel like that's a bad idea for either franchise because of the fact that, they got Drake May. I was wondering who's going to get him, and I think I'm actually going to go a very similar route for the Bears and trade him to the Falcons. So that's between you and me. That's going to be the surprise for Tuesday. But the Chicago Bears going to Adisa Isaac. He's a very, very smart edge rusher. I like him a lot. I haven't factored him even into my board yet, but he has an official grade, and it's actually relatively high compared to where I thought it was. He's not the best edge rusher on planet Earth, but he's just a really smart one, and it's hard to find guys who are that smart on their feet. Detroit Lions going Michael Hall. That's the pass rushing defensive interior I was talking about earlier. Big fan of that. So, the value's there. I'm a fan of it. Jatavian Sanders for the Colts. Honestly, you can't go wrong with getting a versatile weapon at this point. I'm not going to be against it. You got the Seahawks going Cade Stover. So we get a run here on tight ends. Don't really think the Seahawks need to go after another tight end because of the fact that they just naturally pick up dudes down the board. Cade Stover feels like one the Seahawks could go after, but maybe not in round 3. The Steelers go Cedric Gray out of North Carolina. I'd prefer Junior Colson, but I'd be perfectly fine in the 3rd round with getting a potential Mike linebacker here, who is very solid there in Cedric Gray. Delmar Glaze, I've actually seen quite a bit of Delmar. He'll get an official grade soon, so I'm going to wait on my official comments on him, but I don't think that the Browns developing a left tackle is going to be a bad idea at all. We got the Detroit Lions going DJ James, just a little bit too small at 165 for me to feel comfortable with him being my true boundary corner. But if we ended up getting a corner earlier like Dwight McLaughlin, which he's still on the board, I think this would be very, very solid. We got Jacksonville going Dwayne Carter. I don't think he's that good. He has a couple solid reps here and there, but ultimately I feel like he's just kind of been extremely underwhelming. So we'll see what happens at the Senior Bowl. I'm always more than willing to give guys a second chance and boost them up my board. Very happy to do that. Did that with Perrion Winfrey too, and of course, it's not really a good example, but he's somebody who showed a lot of potential and just didn't live up to it. Audric Estime is low-key one of my favorite picks so far in this entire draft for the Cowboys, and that's primarily because he it's just like a 1-2 punch there with Deuce Vaughn. And it's a way to have someone who can complement, but also be potentially a 3-down back with Deuce Vaughn being there as support. Big fan of that pick for the Cowboys. Jamari Thrash for Kansas City here at 92. It's not a bad pick at all. It's a depth pick for sure, but he has a lot of explosiveness. I'm very excited to see what he could be in the NFL. Braylon Trice for the Niners. He is my number 6 player. So the Niners continue winning, but that's what the Niners do. Gotta stay hydrated, kids. Baltimore Ravens go Willie Drew, cornerback out of Virginia State. Again, it's somebody who I personally haven't seen, but looking at it, 6 foot, 185. That's a developmental corner for the Ravens. 11 picks, 34 pass breakups. Feels like a Baltimore Raven. I feel like this could be a 3rd or a day 3 pick for the Ravens for sure. I just don't know enough about Willie to make an opinion or an educated opinion on him. Texas going McKinley Jackson. That is one of the best picks I've seen as well. I know a lot of guys who have been picked up higher than, and naturally, if players who are not good get picked higher, good players who deserve to get picked earlier, slip later, and make the draft better down the line. This is one of those guys. At 320 pounds, 325, this guy's an absolute freak show as an athlete. This is a great spot for him to grow and develop under D'Amico Ryans. We got a tackle here, Ladarius Henderson, out of Michigan, former guard, if I'm not mistaken, out of Arizona State. Ridiculous length. This is a developmental tackle, to say the least. I just wish they addressed it earlier. Round number 4, we got the Panthers going Ashton Galote. He's a stat machine. I think that the other edge rushers on that team, I think his number is 14 or 15. is better than Galote, but you can't say anything about it. This dude puts up a lot of pressures and he has a very good size. Ricky Pearsall for the Cardinals, very underrated receiver. I think the Cardinals have kind of already addressed their receiver room, though. I wouldn't really need to get much more in terms of receivers at the moment. But Chroma out of James Madison. James Madison's been going off. Naturally, their head coach, I forgot where he just got hired to. It might have been IU. But, James Madison's doing some things right. And I'm pretty sure Chroma has one of the higher pressure rates in the whole entire country. So the Patriots sneaking in some dude from FCS, not going to be surprised. Bears going Chris Abrams-Drain. I feel like he's a slot/safety. I don't really know if the actual reps are going to be there for him, but the value's incredible. We got the Commanders going Rod Moore. Again, just the value itself is worth taking a swing on a high-end safety. The Giants going Roger Rosengarten. I think he's going to return and try to be a first-round selection. Right tackle out of Washington. He's a little bit light at 300 pounds. So maybe they could sit and develop him for a year and have him grow, but I'd prefer for him to just develop for a year there at Washington or another university like Alabama. Then we got Jalix Hunt, edge out of Houston Christian. I'm going to say it with me, y'all. I have not studied Jalix Hunt. I don't have Houston Christian tape. Now, could I just try to hunt it down? Maybe. But just between you and me, I also have a life, and I know that Ian does too. But my life consists of finals at the moment. The last thing I'm going to be doing is watching Houston Christian tape when there's other players that I'm still developing my overall grades on. Roman Wilson for the Michigan, for the Jets out of Michigan. I think that, pairing him up with, I would prefer go Brennan Rice here, pair him back up with Caleb Williams, but, it is what it is. James Williams for the Chargers, that's a proper value for James Williams. I mean, I would be willing to spend a second-round pick on James, but here at 105, that's good. That's a good value there for the Chargers. Titans going Max Melton. I think going after a top-tier corner is not a bad idea. Again, Dwight McLaughlin's still on the board, and the Titans do need a boundary corner. Las Vegas Raiders go Jalen McMillan. Again, I'd wish for him to pair back up with Michael Penix, but, we can't get everything we want, right? Jalen McMillan feels like a little bit of a wasted pick there for the Raiders. Go linebacker and get a stud who can help out that defense. Luke Lackey for the Bengals, proper value for an Iowa tight end, not going to complain. Jacksonville Jaguars going Christian Mahogany. Offensive line depth, never a bad idea. He's a solid player, and he's going to be playing the East-West Shrine Bowl, so looking forward to it. Satoa Lumea, I have actually written him down a couple times. High upside tackle out of Utah. I don't really think he's going to be taking many NFL reps anytime soon, but the Packers have that versatility now. You got the Pittsburgh Steelers going Michael Pratt. I think the Steelers do need to potentially be open to going after a quarterback, and need to be open to a corner too, but that is what it is. I think Michael Pratt actually is very solid value here. You got Jonah Ellis, who is a top 32, or is he 33? He is my number 30 player in the draft. Obviously, you know how I feel about Buffalo's Bills edge unit that is getting older and less effective. Tyler Barron, edge/defensive interior out of Tennessee to the Texans. I'm all down for it. Again, getting any freaky defensive player with D'Amico Ryans is going to be something I approve of. Dominic Puny is somebody who I like a lot out of Kansas. The Jets picking him up would be a great steal. Yada Black, defensive tackle out of Iowa. I haven't really written him down. He's not statistically popping off to me, but again, I'm not going to shame going after defensive interior depth at this point in the draft. Jalen Noel, he actually pops off there for Iowa State. He's taken over for Xavier Hutchinson and has done an excellent job. The Vikings might have gotten a steal there in Jalen. Seahawks going Ennis Rakestraw Jr. He's had some big games. He's a very solid corner in terms of size as well at 6'2". And I think the Seahawks could definitely get a good steal here at Ennis Rakestraw. The Colts going Torrey Horton. I think this is quite nice. I'm perfectly fine with the Colts getting a potential stud here in the fourth round, the receiving room. Texans getting a slot corner and Mike Sainristil. He's a good player too, man. I mean, there's some good players that are getting snagged right now, including the Steelers getting Jacob Cowing, who is, where is he on my board? He's right in front of your face at 45. I'm going to definitely be pretty happy with that pick if I'm the Steelers, because it could be a Deontay Johnson replacement. Good after the catch, good overall, big fan of that. Kamen Rucker for the Falcons. Kind of the Falcons are scooping up guys who I think are not the best guys on planet Earth, But, you got Justin Fields, so that's a plus. Cameron Rucker's a statistics guy. I don't really think that as a pure edge rusher, he is that talented for the NFL. Zy Alexander for the Broncos, not going to be complaining about them taking a swing on a corner. Niners going Malik Washington out of Virginia. I haven't watched him enough to really fall in love with him, so I'm going to say TBD. Jalen Wright's extremely underrated. I think this would be a massive addition for the Vikings. Just really, really solid running back for a running back team that could use it. I'd lose my freaking marbles if the Niners got Peyton Wilson because he's going to be a stud as long as he stays healthy. He is graded as my number 2 linebacker in the class, and I've only dropped him because of the fact of his injuries. That's it. Dude's a freak. He's going to end up being a monster on San Francisco. Amani Bailey, he's a solid running back. I feel like there's still some guys who I feel like Marshawn Lloyd who deserve it a little bit more, but I don't think the Chiefs need to be addressing running back anytime soon. Devin Neal's going to stay in pretty much black and purple, which is beyond badass for me, so I'm going to be totally down for the Ravens to select Devin Neal. Blake Corum for the Bears, I don't feel like you can go wrong. I mean, he'd be kind of the Blake Corum to, he would be the Blake Corum. But what's his name? Roschon Johnson would essentially be the complement to Blake Corum there. I'm forgetting his name, the other running back out of Michigan, who we might be seeing soon on this. Jalen Ford out of Texas, he's had his moments. I feel like this is perfectly fine value for the Browns. Howard Cross, a penetrator. I feel like I'd rather get someone with a little bit more size, but at 130, being able to get someone who could be a pass rush help in the defensive interior, not a bad move. I really like Jared Wiley. Glad to see him get some respect here by going to the Patriots. He could be actually used quite a bit there. Commanders going Will Shepard. I feel like this is a bit early for the Commanders to target wide receiver. I, again, would be trying to go after interior offensive line. Like I'm seeing Bo Limmer down the board there would be a little bit more of my selection. Giants going Dylan Lube out of New Hampshire. I've heard a lot of really good things about him. Haven't studied him myself. The Bears going Jermaine Burton. He's a top 32 player on my board, so I think you know how I feel about that. Great pickup for the Bears. You got the Broncos going Bo Limmer. Just talked about it. He is right here at 44 on my board, so being able to snag him for the Broncos, again, really damn good value. The Chargers going Braden Fiske out of Florida State. I think there's better defensive interiors at Florida State, so we'll put it there. But the Chargers boosting on defensive interior, not a bad idea. The Carolina Panthers going Johnny Wilson. He's my number 11 player in the class. Number 12, I love Johnny Wilson. And I'm a big supporter of this one for the Panthers. Tyron Hopper for the Eagles. I've said this as well. I really like that idea. A blitzing linebacker that is just, actually built to be a blitzing linebacker is something that I would love to see John Desai be able to use. Daquan Hardy, that's a solid depth corner. I don't feel like the Raiders need to be going after depth corners. I think they need to be going after guys who could be a potential boundary starter, but Daquan Hardy at 139, not a bad choice. Brandon Coleman has been very underwhelming to me, but the Saints could always use some depth at O-line. Not going to shame it. Brandon Rice actually might end up being the number 2 wide receiver there for the Bills, so at 141, not a bad choice. Jaheim Bell for the Rams, nice versatility, good weapon. I still have him as a top 100 player. Marshawn Lloyd for the Bengals feels a little bit similar to what they have in Chase Brown, but being able to, like, the more the merrier, honestly. Marshawn Lloyd's value is way too good right now. He's my number 46 player in the class, as long as he gets over his fumbling. Arizona Cardinals going Cole Bishop out of Utah. Just solid dude who can play football, just not really the best athlete. That's where I really get stuck up on him. Broncos going Spencer Rattler. At this point in the draft, I think it's perfectly fine. You go and you put him with Mr. Unlimited, and you're going to be perfectly fine. He has the leadership ability that Spencer really doesn't, so maybe Spencer can learn a thing or two because the talent's there. No one's ever disagreed with the talent. He's supposed to be a number 1 overall pick. But he's just a grade A asshole who doesn't deserve to be a leader of a multi-billion-dollar franchise. And maybe if he gets coached up by someone who is worthy, maybe he'll take some notes and learn some things. And I really hope he does, because naturally I have a personal vendetta against him, but I really do want the best for everybody, including Spencer. So hopefully he finds his own way. Javon Bullard for the Bills is going to be a nasty depth pickup. The Bills have been killing it this draft for the most part. The Falcons going Dadrion Taylor Demerson. I assume, based on the fact I did not know how to say his name, y'all can understand that I've studied other players from Texas Tech, not this dude. They actually have a boundary corner who's like 6'3", 220 pounds, who actually has made some really good plays. So that guy I mean, when I see his name, maybe this, I don't think it is this dude, but if I see that name, I'll probably pop it up and I'll shout him out. Nathan Thomas to the Titans out of Louisiana. I love Louisiana Raging Cajun, the offensive lineman, so I'm not going to be against it for the Titans to get some depth here. Tanner Bortolini out of Washington or Wisconsin. I feel like if you're going to go after a Wisconsin lineman, go after, Jack Nelson for the Colts, just because you're getting a tackle who can be moved anywhere else. But again, I'm not going to shame a team for going O-line. Seahawks going Jasheen Davis. I'm a big fan of Jasheen. He's, I think, in like my 130, 140 range. Good player, good value. I'm not going to shame it. Elijah Jones out of BC. I'm not a fan of BC players, so got a little bit of a bias there, but I think cornerback's a solid position for the Rams. Tate Ratledge after trading, I think, did y'all brought in Dalton Reisner. This is going to be a depth player, and actually he's been extremely efficient. Think he'll end up going back and trying to be able to ascend into the day 2 territory. Jordan Birch, he's been actually relatively consistent for Oregon Ducks, so he'd be a good addition here for the Miami Dolphins as well. Kansas City Chiefs take Javon Foster. That's a pick that I absolutely adore. Javon is still, where's he at on my board? Javon, I think, is still, he's number 67, RIP, but really good player nonetheless. Big fan of that for the Chiefs. Trey Harris had an absolute baller game with over 200 yards this year. And I think that'd be a very wise addition for the Detroit Lions to take a swing on the high upside player in Trey Harris. Matt Goncalves, tackle out of Pittsburgh. Good value there for the Jaguars. You can get a depth offensive tackle that has starter potential. I'm being very generous by saying that, but he could potentially fill in if need be. Tyler Davis is, this is proper value for him to go to the Minnesota Vikings. Not going to be against it. I really love Taylor Upshaw. He's old, but he's one of the guys who's given quite a few tackles some problems. Arizona's defense has been extremely, extremely competitive, and this is one of the reasons why. So not going to be too mad with the Panthers drafting another edge. Baltimore Ravens going Justin Eboike out of Alabama. I'm forgetting what number he is, but if he's number 92, I absolutely adore that man because that dude pops off. If he's not, I still think that the depth of Alabama is worth taking a swing on at this point, so I'm going to be fully for it. Thomas Harper, defensive back out of Notre Dame. I'm going to be intrigued. I haven't seen him as much as I really want to say anything. I like Cam Hart. I love Jimmy Morrison. Is his name Jimmy? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Morrison, the defensive back there. So I'm extremely excited to see Thomas Harper because I actually really like Notre Dame players. We're going on to round 6. You got Danny Stutzman here. For me, I take him as potentially my linebacker 1. Like, he is, where's he at? Where's Danny? Danny's 51 on my board. Junior Colson's 47. Y'all know how I feel about that. Of course, I had Ivan Pace Jr. as a top 50 player, or top 55. He's number 53 on my board. And I also love Brian Asamoah. So it makes sense that the Vikings might go after Danny Stutzman, who I really, really like. Then we got the Panthers going KT Levelston. You might as well continue to bring on some offensive line competition. The team definitely needs to at least feel like they need to play for their starting jobs. MJ Devonshire out of Pittsburgh going to the Patriots. Yeah, Pittsburgh's been kind of underwhelming this year, but that's solid. Taj Brooks has been electric this year out of Texas Tech and he's going to be going to the Giants here. So, I'm fully down for this. I think this guy, he might be this day 3 steal at running back. He is really intriguing. You got Jaden Hicks here out of Washington State for the Dolphins. He's had some incredible games this year. He's had some pretty mediocre games. Overall, well worth taking a swing on at 165. Joshua Gray, left tackle, probably going to be interior offensive lineman for the Commanders. Said that they should have went Bo Limmer earlier. Josh Gray can kick in and be that left guard that you need for the future. You got Taj Washington here out of USC going and staying in LA by going to the LA Chargers. Not going to complain about getting some extra wide receiver depth for him. Bryson Nesbitt, tight end, at 218 pounds out of North Carolina. This is a guy who I could totally see working there for Tennessee and being more of that boundary threat. But I do think they could go after an actual tight end, but this is not the class to do it. Cam Hart, speaking of, out of Notre Dame, good value there for the Buccaneers. It's a solid, consistent corner who has some upside. He's not necessarily NFL caliber, but this is why you're taking a swing on him at this spot rather than earlier. Jawar Jordan's a good running back out of Louisville. He'd be a good complement and kind of be that Michael Carter that you wanted for even cheaper. So good player there for the Jets. New England Patriots go Javon Solomon out of Troy. Heard some good things about him, but for me, it's just I'm still kind of butthurt about the other Troy edge that has dropped to 222 pounds. I'm forgetting his name, but you know, it feels like a Bill Belichick thing to go after a guy after Troy. Out of Troy, excuse me. Jedi Barron for the Green Bay Packers. It's just BPA at this point. Really good player. I would look at Keith Randolph Jr. to be more of that run stuffing defensive interior, but the Bills snag him with the next pick. Cincinnati Bengals go Nate Lynn, edge out of William and Mary. Again, that's edge depth. I haven't watched William and Mary, but I do think the Bengals. I'd prefer to just start swinging on like linebackers at this point, and because I feel like they're really good at sniping them down the board. Francisco Mauga out of Miami, out of the U, going to the Saints. Intriguing. I haven't seen him enough to give you an honest feedback, but the U's had some pretty unique players this year, and they've honestly underwhelmed for the most part. The Rams go Kingsley Agukun out of Florida. I'm not going to shame the Rams for going O-line. I can't. Nazir Stackhouse ends up going to the Bills as well. Solid value. I think he's the worst player on the Georgia defense, so I don't really know if I would draft him, but the value is good enough. Then we got the Cleveland Browns going Isaiah Williams. He's had some really good games this year as well. I think he could be another guy who ends up being a steal down the line. 179, the Philadelphia Eagles go Dymere Miller, wide receiver out of Monmouth. The running back actually for Monmouth is really intriguing. I haven't really seen much about Dymere, but the Eagles could be looking for some extra depth at wide receiver. Nelson Caesar, edge out of Houston, goes to the Arizona Cardinals. This is good value for him. There was a while that people were thinking he might be a day 2 pick. So good value there for the Cardinals to sneak a little guy in here at the end. We got the Seahawks going at Nia Smith. Versatile guy, could honestly be used as a scat back as well, which I think would complement Zach Charbonnet and Kenny Walker relatively well and at least keep some tread on their tires. So, big fan of that. Johnny Cornelius, right tackle out of Oregon, going to the Colts. I actually like this one as well. Might end up having to be a guard, though. Miles Cole, edge out of Texas Tech. I don't know what's up with there's another Texas Tech edge, and Steve Linton, that I don't think we've talked about so far. He's the best player on Texas Tech. I'm quite surprised we haven't seen him yet. The Falcons continue taking the weird guys in the draft. Of course, as I say that, Mark Perry goes to the Steelers. Pretty sure he'll be actually at the Shrine Bowl. It's one of the bowl games he's going to be at, Senior or Shrine. I think the Steelers wouldn't be... TCU develops their safeties quite well. I wouldn't be against them going after and taking a swing on a future safety for us. The Bills go Kenny Logan Jr., safety out of Kansas. Haven't seen enough of him to make an honest opinion, but, I really have a kind of a bias for Kansas this year. Don't know why. Really like their players. Detroit Lions end up getting Zach Zinter. He would be going a lot earlier if the leg injury did not happen. This is going to be an investment in the future. Marshawn Kneeland out of Western Michigan goes to the Jaguars. Solid player. Haven't seen enough of him, but I have seen him statistically mark down some reps or some pressures here and there. So good for him. Xavier Truss out of Georgia goes to the Miami Dolphins. Again, another guy who I think will end up actually going back. And I hope he does, but very, very versatile player. He played right tackle a lot this year. Unfortunately, not that well, but he is actually a really solid player. Just, he fills in a tackle because he had to. Patrick Jenkins out of Tulane goes to the Denver Broncos. Big fan, actually, of Jenkins. I think it's Jenkins who I know from Tulane. He's a good player. Tulane defensive linemen are guys who I'll always take swing on. Evan Anderson out of FAU going to the Raiders. Defensive interior, it's a position they should target. Don't know enough about Evan Anderson. We got Jordan Jefferson, D tackle out of LSU, going to the Browns. I haven't seen enough of him in order to make a solidified opinion, but from the D tackle reps I've seen from LSU, he's definitely the one that I don't know the most. We got New Orleans Saints going to Hudson Clark out of Arkansas. I love Arkansas DBs, so I'm going to be fully down for that. Titans then go, starting off 7th round, Isaac Guerendo, running back out of Louisville. I do not know enough about him to make an honest opinion. My boy, Brendan Jackson, edge out of Washington State here at pick number 194 to the Texans. Texans are killing it this draft. Julian Pearl was supposed to be a 3rd, if not 2nd round selection this year, just ended up falling off a cliff. So it would be intriguing to see how the Raiders end up, fixing him and putting him back into the lineup. Really high upside player, just a little bit older. At pick number 196, the Patriots go Jaden Sundle, offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. Heard quite a bit about him in the preseason process, but I haven't seen enough of him from this year to make an honest opinion. I'm not going to blame the Patriots for going after an offensive lineman. Blake Watson out of Memphis. I love running backs out of Memphis. Going to go back to Washington and pair up with Antonio Gibson, who's also from Memphis. But haven't seen Blake Watson catch my eye. But I'm always down to take a swing in the 7th round. Some good on the traits more than anything. Cardinals go Miles Harden, cornerback out of South Dakota. Don't know enough about him. Again, these are a lot of FCS schools that I haven't been able to watch. So, defensive back help for Cardinals. Going to be worth it. Buccaneers going Isaiah Adams. He's been playing right tackle a lot this year. He was actually a really good guard, and it's just ended up being very underwhelming. But Buccaneers would be happy to get him here at 199. At 200, Ray Davis out of Kentucky to the Ravens. My God, I love Ray Davis. He's going to be an absolute beast. Same thing with Cody Schrader, who goes with the next pick to the Cardinals. These two players are some of the most underappreciated players, I think, in all of college football. Titans then go Khalid Duke at a K-State. Pretty sure he's going to go to the Shrine, so excited to see him actually here in person at SMU Stadium. So it's going to be quite fun. Cowboys go Kyrie Jackson. The value's there. The value's there. He's old, but the value's right. I mean, it's a 7th round pick, and you're taking someone who have actual day one value. Quincy Riley out of Louisville, cornerback, goes to the Niners. Again, I'm down for being able to take swings on Louisville corners on day 3. It's worth taking a swing on them. They're really good athletes. There's solid training in there. It's well worth trying to give them at least a draft spot. At pick 205, the Bengals go Javion Cohen. I think he's also very underappreciated. Not the best player on planet Earth, but for a 7th round pick, I'd be willing to take him. I wouldn't be mad at a team taking him in the top 150, maybe even top 120. You got the Texans going Joshua Cephas at a UTSA. UTSA always has some dudes who are kicking ass, so we'll give them credit where credit's due. The Texans continue winning. Green Bay Packers go Roe Torrance, cornerback out of Arizona State. I don't know enough about Roe in order to make a proper opinion. Bills going Phil Mafah out of Clemson. I love the power that Phil can bring to the game. Definitely going to be a Latavius Murray replacement in the long run. Texans going Jontre Hunter out of Georgia State. Another player I do not know enough about. New Orleans Saints going Aaron Casey. He's a good linebacker. They're out of Indiana. This is a very solid pick for the Saints. Minnesota Vikings go Keton Oladapo out of Oregon State. Oregon State's been kicking ass too this year. I'm a big fan of a lot of their players. I feel like the Minnesota Vikings wouldn't be too mad to be able to grab at least some safety depth there at 211. Raiders then go Andre Jefferson, D-tackle Lenore Ryan. Another player who I haven't seen, but again, full support of defensive interior for the Raiders. Colts go RJ Oben out of Duke, who will probably end up being a top 150 player for me. Big fan of that. Tommy Eichenberg goes to the Seahawks. I mean, where's Tommy on my board? Tommy's at 76 on my board, so you know how I feel about him going to the Seahawks. Steelers going Gabe Hall. You're getting pretty much somebody to try to learn and develop from Cam Hayward at 215. It's okay. Iabi Okie Anoma out of Charlotte. He's a good edge rusher going to the Browns. I think that definitely could be one of those guys that, ends up being a very solid rotational depth player for the Browns and sticks to a roster. Renardo Green, he's made some good plays for Florida State even last night. Big fan of him, especially here at 217 for the Lions. 218 for the Jaguars. Jalen White out of Georgia Southern. Haven't seen enough Georgia Southern to make an honest opinion. A ZTF out of Washington going to the Dolphins. This is great value. Someone who I'd be willing to take in the 4th round. Luke McCaffrey out of Rice and been pretty much everywhere going to the Dallas Cowboys. It's worth taking a swing on for the name. KC Chiefs going Tim Smith out of Bama. Again, don't know who number 92 is, but if that's him, hello. Again, D tackles at Alabama are always worth having in terms of depth because they're good day one starters. Pick number 222, the Niners go Prince Pines out of Tulane. We whooped their ass yesterday, but pony up, AAC championship or AAC champions. But not going to shame a team for going after offensive line this late. Same thing with Josiah Aziram going to the Ravens, tackle out of Eastern Kentucky. I am always fine with taking swings on O-lineman late. And ending off the draft, Xavier Watts. I actually like him a lot going to the Titans out of Notre Dame. He actually could end up getting some real reps there as the Mr. Irrelevant. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching and laboring through this with me. Ian, love you for the work that you do. These are a pain in the ass to build. So a lot of respect for the consistent work you put out, even if I disagree. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.